Ferrari's future plans for Hamilton have been revealed. George's new contract has a special clause, and Verstappen gets a boost for the championship. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Formula One fans, what I'm about to tell you might completely change how you view Lewis Hamilton's future at Ferrari. And trust me, this story has more twists than the Monaco Grand Prix circuit itself. Picture this. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, moves to his dream team Ferrari in 2025. Everyone expects magic. Instead, we're watching one of the most shocking underperformances in modern Formula One history. And now, according to explosive new reports, Ferrari has already made a decision that could end this partnership before it ever truly began. Let me paint you the full picture of what's really happening behind the scenes at Maranello, because this isn't just about poor results. This is about broken dreams, massive financial implications, and decisions that could reshape the entire future of Formula One. When Hamilton announced his move to Ferrari, the motorsport world collectively held its breath. Here was the most successful driver of all time, joining the most iconic team in racing history. It seemed like destiny. The contract details were kept deliberately vague, described only as a multi-year deal, but industry insiders estimated it was worth a staggering $57 million annually. But here's where fairy tales collide with harsh reality. Hamilton's first season at Ferrari has been nothing short of catastrophic. 20 races into the season, and the man who once dominated at Mercedes hasn't stepped onto a single podium for his new team. Not one. Meanwhile, his teammate Charles Leclerc has claimed 7 podium finishes and is ahead by a crushing 64 points. The numbers tell a brutal story. Hamilton's best finish for Ferrari is 4th place. Think about that for a moment. A driver who won races regularly at Mercedes can't even crack the top 3 at Ferrari. It's like watching Michael Jordan struggle to make free throws. But the real drama started early in the season with what should have been Hamilton's moment of glory. At the first Comboat Chinese Grand Prix in March, Hamilton finally tasted victory, winning the sprint race and giving Ferrari fans hope that their new star was about to shine. But motorsport can be cruel. And 24 hours later, Hamilton was disqualified from the main race due to excessive wear on his car's skid blocks. This disqualification exposed Ferrari's fundamental problem with their car design. The team has been battling ride height issues all season, forcing them to raise the car's setup to prevent further technical violations. But here's the cruel irony. Fixing one problem created another. Every millimeter they raised the car to avoid disqualification cost them precious performance on track. Ferrari found themselves trapped in an engineering nightmare. Keep the car low for speed and risk disqualification. Raise it for compliance and sacrifice competitiveness. They chose compliance, essentially handcuffing their driver's potential for the entire season. Hamilton, being the perfectionist he is, didn't just accept this situation passively. According to reports, he's been sending detailed documents to Ferrari management, outlining everything from car setup issues to communication problems between departments. One report went to the team after the first few races. 2 more arrived during the break between the British and Belgian Grand Prix. Another followed the Singapore Grand Prix. In Singapore, Hamilton specifically identified Ferrari's policy of sending both cars to the end of the pit lane during qualifying as a critical weakness. He argued that this strategy was causing both him and Leclerc to lose crucial tire temperature while waiting, compromising their performance when it mattered most. This level of involvement shows Hamilton's desperation to turn things around. He's not just driving, he's trying to revolutionize how Ferrari operates. But sometimes, even the greatest efforts aren't enough to overcome fundamental problems. The financial implications of this situation are staggering. Hamilton's estimated $57 million annual salary makes him one of the highest-paid athletes in any sport. Ferrari is essentially paying championship money for midfield results. From a business perspective, this is unsustainable. Now comes the bombshell. According to reports from ESPN, several senior figures within Ferrari have indicated that the team will not offer Hamilton a contract extension when his current deal expires. Think about the magnitude of this decision. Ferrari is prepared to walk away from Lewis Hamilton, arguably the greatest driver of all time. But there's another layer to this story that makes it even more complex. Italian publication La Gazzetta dello Sport claimed in August that Hamilton's contract contains a controversial clause giving him the option to extend his deal until the end of 2027. If true, this would give Ferrari little say in Hamilton's future. Even if his struggles continue, this creates a fascinating power dynamic. Ferrari might want to move on, but Hamilton could potentially force them to keep him. It's like a chess match, where both players are trying to control the endgame. Hamilton himself seems determined to fight through this difficult period. In a recent interview with French publication L'Equipe, he insisted he has no intention of stopping anytime soon despite his current struggles. At the Belgian Grand Prix in July, Hamilton spoke about his refusal to follow in the footsteps of Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel, two legendary drivers who failed to win championships with Ferrari. The psychological aspect of this situation cannot be understated. Hamilton is 40 years old, at an age when most drivers are considering retirement. He made the move to Ferrari specifically to add an 8th world championship to his legacy. Instead, he's facing the possibility that his career might end not with glory, but with disappointment. For Ferrari, this situation represents a crossroads. Do they stick with Hamilton and hope that car improvements in 2026 unlock his potential? Or do they cut their losses and invest in a younger driver who might better adapt to their car philosophy? The team has already shown they're not afraid to make tough decisions. They've managed the ride height problem throughout the season rather than gambling on risky solutions. This pragmatic approach might extend to their driver lineup. Looking ahead, the implications stretch far beyond just Hamilton and Ferrari. If Hamilton's Ferrari career ends in disappointment, it could influence how other top drivers approach late career moves. It might also affect how teams value experience versus adaptability when making driver decisions. The broader Formula One landscape is watching this situation closely. Other teams are certainly taking notes on how this partnership has unfolded. Some might see opportunity if Hamilton becomes available again, while others might view his struggles as a warning about the risks of major driver changes. What makes this story particularly compelling is how it defies expectations. Everyone assumed Hamilton would find immediate success at Ferrari. The assumption was that his experience and skill would quickly overcome any car limitations. Instead, we're witnessing how even the greatest drivers can struggle when the fundamental package doesn't suit their style. As we head toward the end of the 2025 season, every race becomes crucial for Hamilton's legacy. Can he finally break through and claim that elusive first Ferrari podium? Or will this season stand as evidence that even legends can fall? The next few months will determine whether this is just a difficult debut season or the beginning of the end for one of motorsport's greatest careers. Ferrari's reported decision not to extend Hamilton's contract suggests they've already made up their minds about the answer to that question. Whatever happens next, this Hamilton-Ferrari saga has already become one of the most dramatic stories in Formula One history, proving that in motorsport, even the most certain outcomes can turn into the most surprising disappointments. What if I told you that George Russell just secured one of the most interesting contracts in Formula One history? And what makes this deal absolutely fascinating isn't just the money or the length of the contract, but a secret clause that could determine Mercedes' entire future. Plus, there's a management situation that's raising eyebrows throughout the paddock. Here's what's happening. Russell just signed a new deal with Mercedes, but unlike typical Formula One contracts, this one comes with a performance-based trigger that automatically extends his stay through 2027 if he delivers next season. Think about that for a moment. His future at one of the sport's most prestigious teams isn't just guaranteed, it's entirely in his own hands. But here's where things get really interesting. Throughout this entire contract negotiation, There were persistent rumors about Russell potentially cutting ties with his current management setup. Why? Because his team principal, Toto Wolff, isn't just his boss at Mercedes. Wolff and his wife Susie have been part of Russell's management team throughout his entire Formula One career, working alongside his primary manager Harry Soden. Now, you might be wondering why this dual relationship would suddenly become problematic. The answer lies in the Max Verstappen situation that dominated headlines earlier this year. Russell himself revealed back in June that Mercedes was actively pursuing the four-time world champion, and these ongoing negotiations were directly responsible for delaying Russell's own contract talks. Imagine being in Russell's position. Your manager/team boss is openly courting your potential replacement while you're sitting there waiting to find out if you even have a job next year. That's the kind of situation that would test any professional relationship, especially one that blurs the lines between personal representation and corporate leadership. The speculation reached fever pitch when stated pastodation any pasted by lastin by com. Mercedes announced Russell would stay for 2026 alongside rookie Andrea Kimi Antonelli. However, the team deliberately kept the exact contract lengths mysterious, which immediately sparked talk that they might renew their Verstappen pursuit for 2027. After all, if Russell's extension depends on his performance next season, that leaves the door wide open for other possibilities. This is where Russell's latest comments become absolutely crucial. When directly asked about whether Wolff remains his manager, Russell confirmed that the team is still taking care of him, but listen to how he phrases it. He says he's very happy with what they've come to, and if he wasn't, he wouldn't have signed. There's something almost diplomatic about that response, isn't there? What's really telling is Russell's acknowledgement that Wolff could have been much tighter during negotiations if he wanted to be. He credits the Austrian with always rewarding those who deliver, and wanting his people to be happy. But there's an underlying tension there, a recognition that their relationship survived a potentially awkward situation. Think about the psychology here. Russell knows that his boss was actively trying to replace him with arguably the best driver on the grid. That knowledge has to change the dynamic, even if both parties are trying to move forward professionally. Yet Russell seems genuinely appreciative that Wolff didn't take a harder line during contract talks, suggesting there was room for the team principal to be less generous. The performance clause in Russell's contract is particularly fascinating when you consider this context. Rather than getting a traditional multi-year guarantee, Russell essentially bet on himself. If he performs at a specific level during 2026, he automatically gets another year. If not, well, Mercedes has the flexibility they might need if their Verstappen dreams resurface. This arrangement actually makes perfect sense for both parties. Russell gets security if he delivers, which he's confident he will. Mercedes gets an out if they need one, while also maintaining their relationship with a driver who's proven he can win races and challenge for victories when given the right car. But let's talk about what Russell really wants here. He's made it crystal clear that this isn't about money or sponsor obligations or any of the typical Formula One contract perks. For him, it's entirely about winning. That singular focus might be exactly what Mercedes needs as they prepare for the new regulations coming in 2026. The timing couldn't be more perfect. New technical regulations often shuffle the competitive order, and Mercedes has historically excelled during these transition periods. They dominated the hybrid era that began in 2014, and they'll be hoping lightning strikes twice when the next major rule change arrives. Russell's situation also highlights how modern actor Formula One driver management has evolved. The traditional boundaries between team principals, managers, and drivers have become increasingly blurred. It's not uncommon for team bosses to have financial stakes in their drivers' careers, but few relationships are as openly intertwined as Russell's arrangement with the Wolffs. What makes this story even more compelling is how it reflects the broader dynamics in Formula One right now. Driver contracts have become increasingly complex, with performance clauses, exit opportunities, and management relationships that would make corporate lawyers dizzy. Russell's deal represents this new reality perfectly. Looking ahead, Russell's 2026 season becomes absolutely pivotal. He's not just racing for victories and championship points, he's racing for his long-term future at Mercedes. That kind of pressure could either elevate his performance or create additional stress he doesn't need. The relationship between Russell and Wolff will be fascinating to watch unfold. Can they maintain their professional and personal connections while navigating the competitive realities of Formula One? Russell seems confident they can, but only time will tell if this unique arrangement continues to work for both parties. What's your take on this situation? Do you think Russell made the right choice keeping Wolff in his management team, or should he have made a clean break? Let me know in the comments below. What if I told you that a Formula One driver's salary just got accidentally exposed through boring corporate paperwork? And what if I told you this revelation shows us exactly why nepotism in F1 is way more complicated than most fans think? Today we're diving into the wild world of Lance Stroll's salary, which just got partially revealed thanks to British company filing requirements. But here's the twist. This story isn't really about Lance Stroll at all. It's about how money flows through modern Formula One and why the whole pay-to-drive versus talent debate is missing the bigger picture. Aston Martin had to file their annual accounts with Companies House in the UK, which is basically like doing your taxes but for massive corporations. Normally, driver salaries are kept completely secret. Teams and drivers guard these numbers like state secrets. But Lance Stroll is in a unique position because his father Lawrence owns the team, making him what's called a related party in accounting terms. When companies do business with related parties, they have to disclose certain transaction amounts. And buried in these corporate filings, we discovered that Golden Eagle Racing Limited, that's Lance Stroll's personal racing company, received $12.3 million from Aston Martin for the 2024 season. That's more than double what they paid in 2023, when the figure was just $5.6 million. Now, before you start thinking Lance doubled his salary overnight, let's pump the brakes. This number tells us way more about how modern F1 works than just one driver's paycheck. See, that $12 million isn't going straight into Lance's bank account. Golden Eagle Racing is essentially a one-man corporation that handles all of Lance's professional racing activities. Out of that money comes payments to his management team, personal trainers, physiotherapists, nutritionists, fitness consultants, and probably a whole bunch of other people who help keep an F1 driver competitive. Think about it like this. When you hear that a movie star got paid $20 million for a film, that's not $20 million in their pocket. That's the gross amount before their agents, managers, publicists, and everyone else takes their cut. Same principle applies here. But even accounting for all those expenses, Lance probably did get a significant raise for 2024. His contract was renegotiated, and the team wanted to bring his compensation in line with what they considered his market value based on his experience and performance. Here's where it gets really interesting though. Even if Lance kept every penny of that $12 million, not at the top, not at the bottom, but somewhere in that competitive middle tier. To put this in perspective, Pierre Gasly reportedly makes around $12 million at Alpine. Esteban Ocon pulls in about $6 million at Haas. Nico Hülkenberg gets around $5 million at Sauber, and Alex Albon makes roughly $3 million at Williams. So Lance's potential take-home would actually be pretty reasonable for someone with his level of experience. But then you look at the real money in F1, and suddenly, $12 million seems almost modest. Carlos Sainz is reportedly making $19 million at Williams. George Russell just signed a new Mercedes deal that sources suggest could be worth around $30 million per year. That's genuine superstar money. This whole situation reveals something fascinating about how F1 economics actually work. Every team on the grid has pay drivers to some extent, drivers who bring financial backing beyond just their racing ability. The difference is usually whether that backing comes from personal wealth, corporate sponsorship, or national funding programs. What makes Lance's situation unique isn't that Daddy bought him a seat. It's that Daddy bought the whole team. That's a completely different level of financial commitment and risk. Lawrence Stroll didn't just write a check for a racing seat. He invested hundreds of millions in transforming the entire organization. And here's something that rarely gets mentioned. Aston Martin actually received $500,000 in sponsorship money from Lance's racing company. So while the team pays Lance to drive, Lance's company also pays the team for sponsorship opportunities. It's a complex web of financial relationships that goes way beyond the simple narrative of rich kid buys racing seat. The really wild part about all this is how it became public in the first place. Most F1 drivers structure their affairs through companies in places like Monaco or Switzerland, where financial privacy is much stronger. But because Lance is the son of a team owner, and because Aston Martin is a British company, suddenly we get this rare glimpse behind the curtain. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso, who's arguably one of the greatest drivers of all time, and definitely makes more than Lance, keeps his financial details completely private. The only thing we know about Fernando's deal from these same corporate filings is that he gets a free Aston Martin company car, which, let's be honest, is probably the least exciting part of his compensation package. This whole story shows us that modern F1 isn't just about who's the fastest driver anymore. It's about who can bring the most value to a team, whether that's through pure speed, marketing appeal, technical feedback, or yes, financial backing. Every driver on the grid brings some combination of these elements. The sport has always been about money. From the early days when gentlemen racers funded their own cars, to the tobacco sponsorship era, to today's complex web of manufacturer backing and corporate partnerships. What's changed is just how sophisticated and transparent some of these financial relationships have become. So the next time someone dismisses Lance, Stroll as just a pay driver, remember that his situation reveals something much more interesting about how modern Formula One actually works. The money flows in all directions. Everyone brings something to the table, and sometimes boring corporate paperwork can tell us more about the sport than years of paddock gossip. What do you think about F1's complex financial ecosystem? Let me know in the comments below. The Formula One championship battle has taken a dramatic turn, and today we're diving deep into why legendary commentator Martin Brundle believes Max Verstappen's quest for a fifth consecutive title might be over. What happened at the Mexican Grand Prix that changed everything? And why does one of F1's most respected voices think McLaren now holds all the cards? Just months ago, this championship looked like a done deal for McLaren. They were dominating both the constructors' and drivers' standings, with their papaya cars leaving everyone else in the dust. But then something incredible happened. Max Verstappen, the master of impossible comebacks, started clawing his way back into contention. Over the past 6 races, Verstappen has been absolutely phenomenal. 3 victories, podium finishes at every single round, and suddenly that massive points deficit began shrinking. From what seemed like an insurmountable gap, the Red Bull driver found himself just 36 points behind the championship leader with 4 races and 2 sprint weekends remaining. It was shaping up to be one of the greatest comeback stories in Formula One history. But then came Mexico City. The high-altitude circuit that has historically favored certain teams became the stage for what might have been the defining moment of this championship fight. Lando Norris delivered when it mattered most, claiming pole position and then dominating the race from start to finish. It wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. That Mexican Grand Prix result did more than just add 25 points to Norris's tally. It completely reshuffled the championship order, with the British driver leapfrogging his teammate Oscar Piastri to take the championship lead. Suddenly, McLaren had both their drivers at the top of the standings, separated by just a single point. For Verstappen, finishing 3rd in Mexico meant his remarkable podium streak continued, but it also meant losing crucial ground when he could least afford it. The mathematics of the championship became even more challenging, and even the 3-time world champion seemed to acknowledge the reality of his situation in the post-race press conference. Martin Brundle, with decades of experience both as a driver and commentator, wasn't mincing words when analyzing Verstappen's chances. Speaking on Sky's F1 Show podcast, Brundle painted a stark picture of the challenge facing the Dutch driver. According to the former McLaren and Benetton driver, Verstappen now has too much ground to make up, especially considering the remaining circuits on the calendar. The numbers are telling a difficult story for Red Bull. Brundle's analysis suggests that McLaren will likely be the faster package at least 2 of the remaining 4 venues. Qatar and Abu Dhabi, in particular, are expected to favor the McLaren's characteristics. When you combine superior car performance with the 2-against-1 dynamic, Verstappen's task becomes monumentally difficult. This numerical disadvantage is perhaps the most crucial factor in Brundle's assessment. While Verstappen has proven time and again that he's capable of extraordinary performances, he's essentially fighting a lone battle. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris can work together, even if unintentionally, to maximize McLaren's points haul. Meanwhile, Verstappen's teammate, Sergio Perez, hasn't been consistently competitive enough to provide the support that championship fights typically require. The psychological aspect cannot be ignored either. Throughout this comeback campaign, Verstappen has maintained that everything would need to go perfectly for him to reclaim the championship lead. Mexico proved that perfection is an impossible standard to maintain across an entire season. Even finishing on the podium wasn't enough to gain the ground he desperately needed. Brundle's analysis extends beyond just the raw performance differential. He points to the sporadic interference from Ferrari and Mercedes, who occasionally step up to claim podium positions and valuable points. These interventions, while not championship-deciding individually, chip away at the consistency both McLaren and Red Bull need to maximize their point scoring. The strategic complexity has increased dramatically since the Mexican Grand Prix. With McLaren now holding both championship positions, they have multiple strategic options available to them. They can choose to support whichever driver is performing better on any given weekend, or they can play a more conservative game, ensuring both drivers maximize their points rather than taking unnecessary risks. For motorsport fans, this development creates a fascinating dynamic. Instead of the traditional one-on-one championship battle, we now have a genuine 3-way fight with 2 drivers from the same team and 1 lone warrior from a rival squad. The interpersonal dynamics within McLaren will be crucial, as team orders and strategic decisions could ultimately determine not just who wins the championship, but whether Verstappen has any chance of staying in contention. The remaining calendar presents unique challenges for all 3 contenders. Each circuit has its own characteristics, and while Brundle believes McLaren will have the advantage at most venues, Formula One has a habit of producing surprises. Weather conditions, technical failures, strategic errors, or simply exceptional individual performances can change championship mathematics in a single afternoon. What makes Brundle's assessment particularly significant is his unique perspective on the sport. As someone who has experienced the pressure of championship fights firsthand and has observed countless title battles from the commentary box, his insights carry considerable weight. When he suggests that Verstappen would need McLaren to make significant errors to have a realistic chance, he's drawing on decades of experience watching how championships are won and lost. The Mexican Grand Prix may well be remembered as the moment this championship fight shifted decisively toward McLaren. While 4 races remain, and anything can happen in Formula One, the combination of points deficit, car performance trends, and strategic disadvantage has created a mountain that even Max Verstappen might find too steep to climb. What if I told you that Formula One has been hiding one of the biggest scandals in motorsport history for over 15 years? A scandal so explosive that it could completely rewrite the record books and cost the sport's governing bodies a staggering $82 million. Well, that's exactly what's happening right now in a London courtroom, and the story behind it will absolutely blow your mind. Picture this. It's the final race of the 2008 Formula One season. Felipe Massa, driving for Ferrari in front of his home crowd in Brazil, needs just 1 point to become world champion. But he loses the title to Lewis Hamilton by the narrowest possible margin. A single point. Heartbreaking, right? But what if that championship was stolen from him through one of the most elaborate cheating schemes in sporting history? That's the bombshell claim that's currently rocking the Formula One world as Massa takes his fight to the High Court, seeking justice for what he believes was a systematic cover-up that robbed him of motorsport's ultimate prize. Let me take you back to September 2008, to the neon-lit streets of Singapore. The inaugural Singapore Grand Prix was supposed to be a celebration of Formula One's expansion into Asia. Instead, it became the scene of what's now known as Crashgate, a scandal that would make your jaw drop. Nelson Piquet Jr., driving for Renault, deliberately crashed his car to trigger a safety car, period. Why? To help his teammate Fernando Alonso win the race through strategic pit stop timing. But here's where the story gets absolutely wild. At the time of Piquet's crash, Felipe Massa was leading the race. He was on course for crucial championship points that would have secured his title fight with Hamilton. Instead, the manufactured chaos, caused by the deliberate crash, sent Massa tumbling down the order to finish 13th. Those lost points? They would prove to be the exact margin by which he lost the championship to Hamilton just weeks later. Now, you might think this is just bad luck. Racing drivers crash all the time, right? But here's the kicker that's sending shockwaves through the sport today. Former Formula One Supremo Bernie Ecclestone recently admitted in a bombshell interview that he and the FIA president at the time, Max Mosley, knew about the cheating during the 2008 season. They knew Massa was being robbed of points through deliberate manipulation, and they chose to do absolutely nothing about it. Ecclestone's exact words were chilling. Massa was cheated out of the title he deserved. But instead of acting on this knowledge, the sport's most powerful figures decided to protect Formula One from what they called a huge scandal. They swept it under the carpet, allowing the fraudulent result to stand and Hamilton to claim a championship that may rightfully belong to Massa. The legal implications of this revelation are absolutely staggering. Massa's legal team is arguing that this wasn't just a case of one team cheating. This was a deliberate conspiracy by Formula One's governing bodies to conceal the truth. They're claiming that the FIA, Formula One management, and Bernie Ecclestone himself all worked together to cover up one of the most serious scandals in sporting history. Think about the precedent this could set. If Massa wins this case, it would mean that sporting authorities can be held legally responsible for cover-ups that affect competition results. It's not just about the money. Though $82 million is certainly a life-changing sum, it's about the integrity of sport itself and whether organizations can hide the truth to protect their own interests. The defense from Formula One's side is equally fascinating. They're arguing that too much time has passed to challenge the 2008 championship result, essentially claiming there's a statute of limitations on sporting fraud. They're also pointing out that Hamilton was equally affected by the crash in Singapore, suggesting that all drivers face the same disadvantaged conditions. They claim that the full extent of the cover-up only became apparent when Ecclestone gave his confession in 2023. How could Massa have challenged something he didn't know about? It's like being expected to report a crime that was being actively concealed from you by the very people responsible for investigating it. The ramifications of this case extend far beyond just Massa and Hamilton. If the court rules in Massa's favor, it could open the floodgates for other historical sporting disputes where governing bodies may have concealed crucial information. It would establish that there's no expiration date on seeking justice when authorities have deliberately hidden the truth. What makes this case even more compelling is the human drama at its center. Imagine being Felipe Massa, believing for over a decade that you simply weren't good enough to beat Lewis Hamilton to the championship, only to discover that you were actually the victim of an elaborate conspiracy. The psychological impact of learning that your greatest career disappointment was the result of cheating rather than your own shortcomings must be overwhelming. As this legal battle unfolds in London, the entire Formula One community is holding its breath. The sport has survived numerous scandals over the decades, but none quite like this. The idea that championship results could be retroactively changed due to governing body misconduct is unprecedented in modern motorsport. Whether Felipe Massa ultimately succeeds in his quest for justice and that massive financial settlement remains to be seen. But one thing is already clear. This case has exposed serious questions about transparency and accountability in Formula One that the sport can no longer ignore. The truth, as they say, has a way of eventually coming to light, no matter how long and how hard people try to keep it buried.